Yeah, but a lot of you may know us. A lot of you probably don't know a lot about us, about digital alert systems. Um, so let me condense this and talk a little bit about us, about what we're doing, and how that vectors into where things are going, both in broadcast as well as with some federal initiatives that might be dragging us along a couple different directions. Digital Alert Systems has been around since 1953. The parent company, Monroe Electronics, founded in 1953, acquired Digital Alert Systems in 2005 or so. Yeah, 2000, 2010, excuse me. Uh, a couple years later, we divested some of the electrostatic and the older technology areas of the company. Turk Electronics now carries the electrostatic business under our old name, Mineral Electronics, and we became Digital Alert Systems with a focused uh, 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 corporate mission around public warning and emergency services. We're very heavily involved in the video space, serving broadcast television, cable TV. Almost 90% of TV and cable operations in the U.S. use our gear. 100% of cable in Canada. In radio, we're actually stronger overseas, or more prevalent overseas than we are in the U.S. Not necessarily in Canada, but throughout the Caribbean and some operations in South America, Lithuania. Even briefly had a system operating end to end in Afghanistan that NATO blew up before they left. It was for a joint forces base for radio and TV distribution. Um, so we operate in some a variety of environments, some more hostile than others. We are involved in public warning, uh, both traditional broadcast and increasingly new technologies or relatively new technologies. Um, uh, the I'm sorry, I'm looking at Chris Hayes's box, and we turned around there. It actually looked like he was in the water. Um, uh, some of the things we've been working on in the last 20 months or so include, if you probably heard some of the news about this at the last NAB, deploying support for IP audio, native IP audio, AES-67 audio over IP in our device, which means for radio operations and TV, you don't have to take audio, go down to baseband again for the old legacy AS unit, and then convert back up to digital. It's audio through and it's digital through and through if you need it. We've been working heavily with advanced options for OTT, over the top streaming, MPEG dash support. We have native MPEG dash support as well, which comes in handy for both cable and next gen television. With our partner company D2D, we've deployed an option to put an onboard video mux and IP network gateway aboard the DAS deck. Um, uh, so again, a single device handling, muxing, and alerting insertion. But for those using a TAM, harmonic, and Golgi, we've also developed direct interface from the DAS deck into their encoding products. So that kind of removes the need in many cases for a character generator. It's a direct insertion of our feed into the TAM or the harmonic unit, and the insertion of the audio and the video crawl directly at that point. Um, that number impacts there depending on where harmonic and Golgi is located. The injection of the crawl could happen either at studio where it typically does, or even at the transmitter site for greater resiliency. We have been very heavily involved with ATSC 3L. I'm on the board of directors of ATSC, chairman of the IT1 implementation committee, and we contributed the actual specification for advanced emergency information. We'll talk about what that is later, but we contributed it as a non-proprietary open specification as part of the A331 standard, and it's enhanced. I wouldn't call it emergency alerting. It's an enhanced newsroom function uh, that's part of the standard, but we also can drive it from our product. Um, and I'll talk a little about the rest of these points as we go through the presentation. I'll be respectful of your time. Um, I There's a lot going on here in the background. I'm here in Washington D.C. where I work and live, but also I've got a corporate meeting. My executive staff are down here, the people I report to, and on top of that, We're having an interesting day. I don't know if you guys have heard, but most of the cell phone carrier networks in major cities have been disrupted. What's causing that? I don't know. I have my suspicions. I'm waiting for the news to come out, but most of our cell phones here are down, which actually signals, I think, maybe this will be a reminder to those on the Capitol Hill, those in the policy community at the FCC, broadcasting matters because these suckers apparently are a little bit more vulnerable than the carriers wanted to allude to. So the national cell phone networks, at least in DC, New York, Chicago, major cities, are all down. I don't know about yours out in Oregon, but whether
It's
they can get.
not.
Sorry, it's not.
It's not. We're using my cell phone as a hotspot to do the Zoom.
That is very interesting. So they are all down across T-Mobile and Verizon and AT&T in DC and Northern Virginia. They're down in New York City. They're down in Chicago. I don't know if this is infrastructure or a targeted cyber attack. But point being that if there was a emergency, local, state, or national right now, I have my questions about whether a WIA could go through, which again should be a reminder to the powers that be, broadcasting radio, broadcasting TV is still very, very relevant. So let me jump through a couple of different thoughts. Again, it's a busy day. My thoughts will be maybe a little less organized than usual, which can be pretty bad. Also, if you have any questions or thoughts or disagreements, just jump right in. I hate these one-way lectures that we all hear. Just jump right in, disagree with me, fight with me, what have you. I want to throw a couple of things out here. Um, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the Beltway. So the FCC has thrown out a couple of notice of paroles rulemaking. One is on and notice rulemaking. The comment period is now closed, but on EAS, reinventing EAS, which is really interesting because the questions they ask are more a notice of inquiry kind of thing that, quite frankly, should have been tackled, in my opinion, in a committee, interagency working group, or CISRIC or something like that, not in a rulemaking per se, but they issued a proposed rulemaking. No proposed rules, but all questions. Fundamentally, five or six of them, are EAS and WIA relevant anymore? Are they doing the job? How can they be improved? Should more entities have an alerting authority, like utilities, nuclear power plants, dams, schools, universities? Um, well, actually, I should give the comments as I go along here. The comments from the broadcast community were resoundingly in support of EAS and WIA, but EAS. Broadcasting is still relevant. EAS is a critical lifeline. It has areas that need to be polished, improved, secured, to be sure. Nobody's arguing that. But without broadcasters are saying, the NAB is saying, EAS is relevant because broadcast is relevant. And quite frankly, implicitly they're saying EAS needs to be relevant because broadcast needs to be relevant. EAS is one of the few differentiating areas between broadcast and streaming media at this point, especially localized EAS. Should more entities have alerting authority? Resounding no. There were some that said in some cases yes, but most people said, respondents said, alerts should be routed through a state or local authority. You shouldn't let private sector entities issue their own alerts over these particular alerting pathways. So WIA, let them ask the local authorities to initiate. And sensors were a bit split. Some agencies like USGS said in the case of earthquakes, tsunamis, it might make sense to automatically trigger for specific events. Um, um, Others have said sensors, yes, but someone in the middle to make sure it's not a false positive. So we'll see where we go with that. New features. So the FCC asked about a whole bunch of different features, including primarily video and multimedia. A lot of us cautioned, and we joined with NAB. We didn't coordinate, but we had the same comments that video could be done, but it's a mission change and it's mission creep. The more you load onto EAS, the more fragile it becomes. The beauty of EAS is that it's resilient, it's simple, it's dumb simple. If you want to add more, like video, longer messages, God forbid, speechifying by public authorities, that's no longer emergency alerting. That's emergency public information, or possibly even just plain news. So we asked the FCC to slow down on that one, rethink that. I was part of a White House project a decade ago or more, and this is way back in the day. The first thing that the White House guys said is the boss, if the president is getting on a video, it's got to be 1080i. So they want a full HD stream coming out over EAS for a national emergency message. Most of us, including FEMA, are kind of balked at that. I think you pretty much can guarantee that today's White House would want at a minimum HD, probably 4K video if available, which would be a budget buster in terms of bandwidth. So video, the consensus was no, could be done, but not the right mission. Multimedia, yes, we came out strongly in favor of that. Yes, multimedia could be done and could optionally be relayed by services that can handle multimedia. We'll talk about that with ATSC3. Um, uh, Symbology, we came out very strongly in support of voluntary usage of symbology with emergency alerts. We've actually been involved in creating a symbol set for the broadcast, cable, and streaming community. Um, and then, speaking of streaming, the big question is, what about other services like streaming? YouTube TV is basically TV at this point. It's got live linear programming. Should services like that be required to carry some form of alerting, such as, well, at a minimum, geo-targeted to the entire United States? If an EAN goes out, couldn't you blast everybody on your platform in the U.S. with some form of alert? We didn't. My company, Digital Alert Systems, we didn't comment on this one. All the streaming services said, no, my God, we can't do any form of alerting over our streaming platform, which just between us friends is nonsense for many of them. Like I said, we've been involved in working on OTT and streaming platforms, and it can be done in various forms, particularly on a voluntary basis. But the streamers don't want to support it. Then there are additional FCC rulemakings that kind of dovetail with some of the things here that I mentioned below under NAB petitions. So there is a rulemaking in response to the ATSC 10 sunset, asking about the NAB petition to sunset ATSC 1 and go with ATSC 3.0. It is a lively petition. It is robust. And it's going in a couple of different directions. One is a lot of those who invested a lot of time and energy on ATSC3, including ourselves, have said that there needs to be a managed transition to next-gen broadcast. It can't just be leave it to industry. So on the one hand, we're saying the moderately heavy hand of government does need to weigh in here at some point if there's to be a transition, but we cautioned that the NAB sunset period might be a tad aggressive. They wanted to transition by 2028 in major markets, and that we thought was a bit aggressive. That's just our opinion. Your opinions may differ. There are those who have filed saying, no way, no how. We don't want any ATSC requirement or mandate at all. That includes the Consumer Technology Association, the guys who make TV sets, which confuses the heck out of me because they're the ones making ATSC 3.0 product. So, that seems to be arguing against themselves, and someday I'll get an explanation of why they're taking that position. Several smaller broadcasters have argued against 1.0, principally because of viewership and the cost of the transition. And there is a small flurry of activity challenging 3.0 and 1.0, saying in one case a group of low power television stations advocating adopting 5G broadcast, which is still an experimental technology basically, but that's That latter one is problematic to me on a number of levels. To adopt 5G broadcast by itself means you're giving up your television function, the over-the-air free access function in ATSC 1.0 or 3.0, which means to me, bluntly, bottom line, you should be prepared to either give up your license and have and reapply as a data provider, or pay for the value of your spectrum as a data service, just like the C, D, and EF blocks auctions went off, which could be New York City up to $10 million per license. I didn't write that to the FCC, but that's quite frankly where a lot of us are thinking here in DC. The 5G petition on its own doesn't stand very strongly. Running a system with ATSC3 Next Gen TV with a sliver reserved for 5G services, that makes sense. And there are experiments with that right now. Several operators are looking at doing a hybrid ATSC 3.0 and 5G service, still doing television broadcast, but also creating a business model for themselves, doing ATSC 3.0 and ATSC 5, I'm sorry, ATSC 3.0 and 5G data. There's a petition, oh, excuse me, there's a rulemaking on broadcast sorry, navigation systems, GPS, and enhancing GPS with additional forms of geolocation and timing, PNT systems. NAB and others have weighed in favor of the FCC supporting something called BPS, Broadcast Positioning System. BPS is a capability that ATSC can support, basically allowing television stations to serve as a PNT source, an alternative PNT source, in case GPS goes down. It's a very interesting idea. I think that in combination with emergency alerting could be an extremely powerful offer to the marketplace. That is ATSC 3.0 broadcast television, next gen TV, in portable or mobile mode with broadcast positioning could yield targeted advertising, what a lot of people are doing, but geo-targeted alerting down to much narrower than what a cell phone can do currently with WIA. It's tighter than 1/10 of a mile geo-targeting with BPS. And then what I wanted to say, software EAS, probably the hot button there. We've taken some heat for our stance on software-based EAS. I want to talk about that in some detail and explain why we're coming the direction we're coming from. It's not that we can't do software EAS or won't do it or firmly oppose it. It's that we have some very fundamental questions about software EAS before we run headlong in doing it. We have a software-based version of our system already. All right, full disclosure, surprise, we can already do software EAS. But we've run into a serious number of challenges in terms of standardization, in terms of cybersecurity, big problem. Certification concerns, IPLOS conformity concerns, and quite frankly, the business issues of it. If you have, we can go into the gory details of it, but if you have software going into computers at 1,000 broadcasters and every broadcaster has their own configuration or own issues, our customer service burden goes through the roof. So, this gets to the business of EAS, that if we're going to have a much more burdensome customer support function, probably 24/7, 365, any manufacturer needs to rebuild their business model around that. And that develops costs, and that implies a cost model that translates onto the customer. We're not in favor of profiting off of EAS in that manner. We're not looking for making EAS into a software as a service, where you guys are familiar with it already with broadcast operations, with HD radio, etc., having to pay for recurring costs. I mean, I've never seen anybody raise their hand in a room when they say, "Would you mind paying for software based EAS as a service?" paying for EAS every month or every year as a recurring fee for the rest of your station's life. Would anybody in that room like to do that? Because I wouldn't. So that's some of our concerns around software EAS. We can go into details of from the technology side, but talking a little bit about where we are today, we're trying to make the distinction with the NAB. I'm sorry, with the FCC about um, uh, uh, the difference between legacy EAS devices, the first generation of CAP EAS devices, and what we consider a modern emergency information system, and including where we're going. And notice I didn't say modern EAS system, modern emergency information system, which for us is a secure standard-based gateway for a very broad range of public warning channels. Um, this is kind of an oversimplification of what we do, where our software and hardware elements lay on a secure device. DASDEC is very different than what it was just 7 years ago. Um, uh, our device is surrounded by a series of government security as government certification requirements. These have been undersold or underappreciated by some of the supporters of software-based DAS. We were surprised by this. We suspect that other manufacturers may not be in full contact with the government. We are working very closely with CISA, DHS, FEMA, and others on this. There's this stuff you guys know about, the FCC Part 11, Part 15 certification, the IPOS conformity testing, the S-Docs we go through. But now there's a series of CISA and NIST requirements that we fall under, including just a few of them, including the CISA framework, Edge device mitigation strategy, SP1800, hardware supply chain disclosures, trusted for execution environments. It's not as fun to be an ES manufacturer as it used to be. We've got a lot of government oversight now from competing, dueling banjos of government agencies. Anyway, that blue box, that DASDEC platform, is the middleware, the glue that content management system essentially that feeds emergency information in different formats to a whole range of outbound systems, digital signage, middleware, cable TV head ends, ATSC signaling servers, TV, radio, um, websites, digital signage. We're doing VMS signage in one state. Um, it's the whole gamut of alert outputs. Sorry, I'm stuck here. I can't advance. If you really want to get under the hood, and this is why we took a step back and saying, yeah, I don't think guys who are proposing software EAS, you understand what a modern EAS platform is, whether it's a digital alert system, STASDEC, or I don't know if Trilithic's still answering phone calls, but the Trilithic device. But it's not just a piece of software you stick on a Windows 97 PC and say, there you go, we're done. Um, Above secure OS, we've got the encryption layer, we've got a whole series of software modules, the IPOS cap server, the EAS encoder decoder, certificate management, text to speech, character generation, and now an AAS 67 live wire element, EASnet, which is a separate protocol used by a huge part of the industry to communicate from the DASDEC to media keyers and cable head ends, SCT18 DBS 168 modules, MPEG-2 and MPEG- generators, ATSC3 generators on board, and on and on and on. But DASDEC also has a satellite client and a data broadcast ATSC1 data cast client on board, remote management tools for Halo, and that doesn't even get into the onboard multiplexer, partition Ethernet, the 3 radio tuners. Um, there's a lot there. The other thing that confused us, by the way, is wait, so if you abstract all this software, you still need a security platform and you still need radios, outside radios. Well, that's still a 2 unit. Yeah, you still need hardware. So that's what confused me. It's either you know I I'm not completely clear why their NAB is behind this proposal because it actually costs more to do it the way the NAB is proposing it and adds more complexity than a modern EAS approach. But, it, reasonable people can disagree. What does that mean for radio? I see a friend from TV, one of our friends from TV just left. So what does that mean for radio? In this case, in an IP realm, so let's talk about an all IP station. The digital audio playout goes through the DAS deck, handled as audio over IP, handled straight out to the audio processor, along with, importantly, the alert metadata and the program metadata. In reality, here's one case. You've got we're working. Oh, I'm sorry, Al. TV person still here. The We're working with Telos, one of several vendors we're working with, to deploy what we jointly call EAS at the edge. All of us are calling this concept EAS at the edge to directly interface the DASDEC's IP base, the digital audio and the digital data outputs to the Omnia 9. So a direct interface via live wire and other protocols to the PPM, to the audio processor, the RDSA decoder, and out to the AM, FM, I'm sorry, the FM HD modulator and the transmitter. Okay. This vastly simplifies the workflow, reduces cost, and you have a three platform solution. The Omnia 9, the DASDEC, and the FM modulator plus transmitter. But as the old Roncos commercials went, but wait, there's more. Or actually, in this case, but wait, there's less. So bringing Nortel into the party with Telos, we further narrowed the entire station chain down to 2 units. The DASDEC doing the radio monitoring, the CAP monitoring, the emergency alert filtering and forwarding. Again, IP throughout to live wire device, PPM audio processor, RDS encoder, and the FM modulator, doing all the communications directly and out through the Nortel transmitter. Again, to Nortel. The Nortel GG2 is not a small device; it's a refrigerator size unit bracket. But we've narrowed the station platform to this. Again, very elegant, very simple, cost effective, and we think starts to point the way towards really cool things that HD radio, that FM radio can do in the near future or do now. The ability for the DASDEC to simultaneously output the alert message and aggregate additional content and make it available to your newsroom. Make it available for direct export to your website server, your web server, so you can post alert updates on your website automatically. Push it to whatever mobile app or desktop app your station might be using for consumers. Push out the text to RDS or other radio tools, accessibility tools, and quite frankly, generate symbology and make that symbology available for HD radio display. And not hypothetically, we did this last year, or was it 2 years ago now? Yes, guys, 2 years ago now. We did this over the air in a low power setting, transmitting sample emergency alerts with symbology. The symbology here displayed as program art into several different vehicles. The Ubiquity guys were surprised. These are actually vehicles that were on the Ubiquity booth. They were kind of surprised to see us when they tuned to our channel. All of a sudden, they're getting an emergency alert with the alert symbol. Again, that's a symbol for just a plain old message, a test alert. But what we've done is, skipping topics here, working with a variety of players in a group called Envisa, we've began to pioneer a standardized symbol set for emergency alerts that we think may solve a lot of the questions that the FCC is asking, the accessibility people are asking, might actually make HD radio just make a little more advanced in terms of reaching to the consumer and portraying, the information that they're at a glance. The old adage, picture could say 1,000 words. Symbology used for advanced EA display could also be used for character generators. I'll show you that in a second. Be used for desktop apps, websites, streaming apps, etc. So we're starting to get some traction on that, but of course the government has to invent their own. We'll get there. The symbol sets will be standardized very shortly, but the bottom line is that these new modest additions to emergency alerting that we're bringing could have a major impact, such as the FCC asking, well, we need to have the alert on the air or on mobile handsets in 13 languages. That's literally the rulemaking they just published a couple of weeks ago. That telephone handsets in a year will have to handle user selectable 13 languages. Well, you're not going to do that in radio, not elegantly. You're not going to do that in TV. You're not going to do that in cable TV. But a tsunami symbol, just the mere appearance of the symbol, can have a dramatic impact, a persistent impact, even if you don't have the full text out in the language of the particular individual. I mentioned TV. Finally, turned to TV, and we've worked with Kai TV, and here in the upper right where you see the green alert, that's Minnesota. That one's a live broadcast. The other two are mock-ups. But with Kai TV, they are inserting our graphic from the DASDEC into the EAS crawl. The EAS crawl does its job, and the symbol at a glance and the color scheme really informs the viewer for an EAS the urgency, the severity, the type of message in a symbol, rather than having to wait for that crawl to keep chugging along until it eventually gets to the message. Um, the um, the other part here is persistence. That if you have a tsunami alert, I think specifically of Washington, Oregon, if you have a tsunami alert or some similar issue, and the alert crawl goes out and terminates, and then for some reason the viewer sees an alert on their phone and goes to TV, turns on the TV, the crawl is gone. You can keep the icon up persistently for the duration of the alert. So at your option, with a product like Kai TV, with a character generator like Kai TV, that in a 15-minute alert, that icon could stay up for all 15 minutes, even though that crawl might have disappeared in the first 30 or 90 seconds. Again, for the most urgent types of alerts, that's a valuable option. Uh, if you don't want to do it, we would never suggest to the FCC that thou shalt have to do this type of approach. But we think it's a real value added, especially when it comes to next gen TV and putting this type of symbology into ATSC3 applications. Speaking of which, we've also been working very closely with FEMA. This is where my presentation takes on a life of its own, turning its own pages here. We've been working very closely with FEMA for several years on a whole bunch of initiatives. One is bringing ATSC3, Next Gen Television, into their IPAWS lab in Indian Head, Maryland. The IPAWS lab is a test bed for various deployed technologies. In this case, wearing two hats. I'm involved in ATSC, as I mentioned. I'm also chairman of the Next Gen Video Information Systems Alliance. So I brought members from both groups together to deploy basically an end-to-end ATSC3 station at the IPAWS lab. We've got ATSC3 4K content being broadcast just basically within 2 or 3 floor area of the building, but also have given them an emergency alerting capability for both EAS and advanced emergency information, the app-based service within their laboratory. Again, alerts from any vendor going through IPAWS Open, the test lab facility, being inserted into the broadcast stream as well as the data stream, and out through both wired and broadcast receivers throughout the lab floor. It's a pretty cool test bed for experimenting with enhanced EAS. Pretty cool to get them understanding advanced emergency information. And that one actually might have had a side effect. They became so interested in what we were doing with advanced emergency information. They began building their own look and feel mock-up of what they'd like internet applications to look like based on the work that we did. But I guess that's kind of a cool homage. But they really would like to find a way for internet providers and streamers to start putting emergency alerts in front of their users. So what is ATSC3 and this so-called advanced emergency information? Well, Next Gen TV is, and Hal, you probably know this or can even speak to it better than I can, but Next Gen TV is or ATSC3 is the Next Gen television standard that is an all IP system, IP throughout, which supports high def video, surround audio, um, customizable user preferences, but also application or database services such as advanced emergency information. When it's advanced emergency information is not just EAS, it's a lot more than that. It goes well beyond EAS. It's any form of emergency or urgent information. I don't even want to say emergency, urgent community information that can be served to an application on the ATSC3 receiver. In many cases, the application are native to the broadcast application. It can serve alert messaging with audio, video, multiple languages, selectable by the user. It can be geo-targeted. If the ATSC receiver is location aware, you can target alert to where is relevant within your cover area. If the polygon's included, the polygon or the subfips or even the address can be included in the message and sent out. And the receiver, if it knows where it is, can display the message or ignore it, as case may be. So geo-targeting, selectable messages, and much greater information. Again, not just for EAS. Think about school closings. That never-ending list of schools that close during inclement weather. That could be served as an app through the app, pop up, scroll through, see if the school is there, and scroll through it. Urgent traffic information, road closures, mass transit information, airport information, the type of situation awareness your listeners, your viewers, their viewers may want to know, they can click through and get from your platform, from a Next Gen TV, instead of always having to run to the internet, always running off to have to get it from a web-based service, which quite frankly may not be available during a mass infrastructure outage. This is the guts of the system as it's been deployed. We've front-loaded advanced emergency information and ATSC3 support in every DAS deck. So whether they know it or not, 90% of broadcasters in the US already have support for Next Gen TV for advanced emergency information. It's an option they just need to enable. The DAS deck is a rules-based appliance. So what we're doing is aggregating information from different sources, treating those sources appropriately, depending on whether it's a commercial source, a governmental source, a news source, allowing by the way, broadcasters can initiate their own messages directly, type in their own local, or import their own local information, such as school closing, I mentioned before. The policies can be set that if certain things should go to alert, to EAS, they will do so. Life as usual. EAS with ATSC3 doesn't change. EAS will always be EAS, for good or for bad. But if you think about all that content, EAS is content, blasphemy. It's value-added content. You think about all that information you would hate to go over a crawl. You would hate to have audio interpreting programming. But that could be useful content that's sent through into your ATSC3 application. Could also be worthwhile sending through to your website or other digital properties. Rather than losing that content, that's for free data from the National Weather Service. Free is an unbelievable amount of content that DASDEC is aggregating and frankly tossing out because it's not relevant for EAS. Here's a cool one. What we'll be doing is grabbing the WIA message and making that available. So yes, the emergency manager now has what I personally think is an unhealthy fixation on mobile phones, mobile alerting, to the exclusion of broadcast media. That's a blunt statement there. But I think in this case, if they send a WIA message, well, guess what? We can grab that WIA message and make it available in ATSC30 AEI. We can make it available to your digital website property. So you're not excluded from WIAs. You'll be able to carry that kind of information on your station, and not have to worry about the emergency manager continually forgetting to trigger EAS because it quote unquote goes to everybody, goes too broadly. Well, like I said, geo-targeting. If it goes to your website and everybody sees it, well, that's fine. They're on their website, you're not intruding. If it goes to geo-targeted receivers and you are bothering certain people, still you've met the mission voluntarily. You're notifying people in the impacted area, even if they haven't gotten it on their cell phone, which like today, I'm getting nothing on this thing, absolutely nothing. Um, so that's it. It's literally drop in. EAS doesn't change, and its existing protocols going out to Trevani, Ensys, Digicap, Ilgo, and I forgot his name. There's another vendor, but the four or five vendors of digital and signal servers, we've already got the interfaces. It's literally drop in and go. If you've already got the DAS deck, you don't have to do anything else. There may be a couple of license keys you enabled, but you're good to go. So hopefully we've made that simple in terms of if and when ATSC happens to a television station near you. The last thing I wanted to talk about is something very cool we're doing in Ohio. We'll be doing this in two more states on the East Coast. Announcements probably to come out from the state agencies in a couple of months. So I won't talk much about the details, but Ohio, for the past 7 years, we've had a system operating 24/7, 365. We capture all IPAWS alerts. We have those transmitted by all the public broadcasters. In this case, it was public broadcasters as data broadcast transitions. They're in the background. They're transmitting the IPAWS alert feed behind their normal programming as a data stream. We have provided 66 LP1s, LP2s, and LP3s in Ohio with something that was called the DXM before. It's now called the DAS link, which is an ATSC 1030 security appliance. Basically, bottom line means is that if and when the internet goes out, broadcasters can play the role as basically a terrestrial satellite system, continually transmitting the IPAWS open feed to participating broadcasters to keep EAS alive in the case of a major regional outage. Does it work? Yes, very well. So like I said, for 7 years now, 24/7, 365, there was a internet outage, a power outage and an internet outage in a major part of Ohio several years ago. During that time, there was an Amber Alert. The Amber Alerts got to few cell phone towers because their power was running out and their internet connections were disturbed. The IPAWS open feed was disrupted because there was no internet service. What was I going to say? EAS was not used because the local authorities initiated through IPAWS. So that somehow they got the alert, or the state agency got the alert to IPAWS. IPAWS issued the alert open, but the broadcasters in the relevant part of the state couldn't receive the alert because it was internet based. But this system, our system, when I say our, I mean a whole community of players, manufacturers, and broadcasters. The OEAS system, the Ohio EAS system, captured the IPAWS feed, transmitted as data, and the alert went out. Bottom line, is that somebody, and they constantly attribute to the cellular, but in this case, somebody heard over radio the Amber Alert. The Amber Alert got to that broadcaster via this datacast system. The kid was recovered because somebody noticed the information that was in the Amber Alert that was transmitted over radio, and that kid was retrieved. So for whatever else I've done in the last 15 years working with digital alert system, right there was worth it. And that is the power of this system, and that's the power of broadcasting when other systems fail. We saw it live in operation, and unfortunately, we'll likely see it again and again. So wrapping up, because I know you guys probably want to digest and talk about other things. Where are we going with the EAS? Where's the broadcast community going? I think we're increasingly going to be looking at out-of-band IP transport. Just tea leaves here, but the kind of systems we're talking about, data broadcast over ATSC 1 and ATSC 3, um, data broadcast via satellite, are likely to supplement and possibly eventually replace the daisy chain, the FSK squawks. I think out of band IP transport of the cap message itself replaces the sorry, I'm sorry, email from FEMA, text message from FEMA, excuse me. Next gen broadcast relay. I am relatively bullish on the prospects for ATSC 3, relatively. If the government works with industry on a managed sunset, I'm bullish. If the FCC does nothing, it dies, at least in this country. My blunt, and I'm on the board of ATSC, so I shouldn't be that blunt. But it needs ATSC 3 needs community support, and if it goes through, then next gen broadcast relay happens, advanced emergency information happens with the enhanced EAS. I think, as I mentioned before, better synchronization of WIA actually has to happen, and I think FEMA has definitely got the message that putting their eggs in the wireless phone basket is a very bad idea. And I think today, at least in the major markets, that drives the point home firmly that what wireless infrastructure, any infrastructure, is vulnerable on its own. Um, anyway, that's kind of where I say things going. I just condensed probably 3 hours worth of stuff into what it was, 45 minutes or so, 50 minutes. So apologize for the denseness of it, but that's really where I see things going in the near future. Let me pause there, catch my breath. Hopefully, I haven't said anything too silly, and open the floor to take the questions or complaints.
I'm unfamiliar with the term WIA. Is that weather?
Wireless emergency alerts. It's the cell
Thank
phone
you.
alerts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm here in Washington, D.C., so it's acronym city.
The cellular outages going on is limited to Verizon.
Is it? We've got a huge outage in Ashburn, Virginia.
Okay. Yeah. T-Mobile and AT&T, according to outages.org, are working just fine.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. My boss, she's in the next room. She's on T-Mobile. She's down, and in Ashburn, Virginia, everybody in Ashburn, Virginia is down. So
That may be local, but
it might be local.
the AT&T is at least regional, if not national.
Okay.
Keep the
Okay.
Verizon.
That's good news. But I'll still stand by the point that even if one carrier is down,
Yeah.
don't burst my bubble. Come on.
I'm impressed or influenced by the blurring that you've done about software only versus hardware only, and that the two have to be together.
It's for us, the EAS device is not just an encoder decoder. It's a security appliance. We learned that the hard way. We took our lumps with zombies and all sorts of hackers. Um, where we learned from it, and we work close with government agencies.
The hardware is basically a Linux box and a radio.
On the old appliances, yeah, but we're moving beyond that very quickly. Right now, the application is bonded to the hardware, so the profile of the DAS deck is now looking much more like an appliance than merely a generic Linux box with some radios on board. The at the government's request, CISA's request, we bonded the software to the hardware, and that's what we had to remind the FCC. Left hand talk to right hand. On the one hand, we got CISA, NIST, the Homeland Security guys saying, "Do this." On the other hand, You got, the industry saying we'll do this other thing because it could be cheaper. It's not. On the other hand, we've got the challenge of other market participants, frankly, being very small 2 and 3 man businesses. One guy is selling EAS boxes based on a Windows machine, and that's the generic box that I'm worried about. We got tagged with a lot of cyber stuff because, quite honestly, early on, somebody retained a hacker to go after us. They slipped and said and admitted in front of a government agent who was with us that we started questioning them, and then they said we're not at liberty to disclose our customers' request or whatever it was, and every eyebrow went up. That's where they went from a white hat to being a black hat. They were basically in Brooklyn Mafia terms, it was a paid hit. It was a contract hit. So that whole zombie thing was contrived. But they did find a vulnerability. But of course, once a hacker finds a vulnerability, everybody else has to glom on because it's a news event. And that's how hackers get their notoriety, by getting in the news, or even good hackers. So we became the whipping boy, became stronger for it, but also learned a lot of things. And that's why we're taking the approach we're taking, not because we don't want to take our software off the box, but because it opens an enormous can of worms. And also, quite frankly, transfer the liability. If something goes wrong with the data stack right now, if there's a hardware vulnerability, a software vulnerability, somebody backdoors in, unless if it's our flaw in design, whose responsibility is it? Mine. My thumb's pointed this way. Mine. If you take our software deployed on your stack, on your computer, in your enterprise, under your network, and there's a hack, whose responsibility is it? Yours. 100%. Other problem. The industry, including NAB, lobbied very hard for broadcast to be considered critical infrastructure. Congratulations, they won. You are. Because you're critical infrastructure, that triggers the very guidelines I'm talking about. So hardware has different requirements than software in a critical enterprise setting. And NAB, whoever was from NAB, really tried to shoot me down on that. But when I sat down and talked with the FCC and the guys from FEMA, they were like spot on. That if you go software only, you have to go through a complete recertification of everything, and that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost. So that's a challenge right there. I will say, and I don't want to beat up NAB. I do respect what they're trying to do here. I just wish they had coordinated a little bit with industry first. But you notice that the FCC notice proposed rulemaking did not at all mention software EAS. There's a reason for that. They're not looking at it. So despite all the yelling about it, it's not something the FCC is looking at as a priority agenda item. They've got other fish to fry right now. So I know there's a lot of noise, a lot of people saying we want shareware, we want freeware, we want software because it'll be easy and cheap, and get rid of these guys like Harold and Digital Alert Systems and Jim Gorman, and let's do our own thing. But the other side to that is, well, you get what you pay for. And then when it doesn't work, whose door does the FCC knock on? We're seeing this already in Canada, where there are some they don't have the same rules. They have some open source solutions, and their version of Amber was up there. And guess what? The open source stuff didn't work. And who do you call for open source software? Nobody. It's open source.
Well, regardless of whether it's hardware or software based, if it fails, the FCC is going to look at the licensing.
Within
Back to Colorado.
Yeah.
there will, but there are mitigations. That is, if the device fails and it's purely the device's fault, we get the call. If the system fails and it's software on a device you configured, then when it comes to fine time, the notice of client liability, that's where there are fewer mitigating circumstances. At the bottom of the day, our job is to try to help you guys not get fines. We're trying to make sure you guys remain compliant. Anyway, hopefully somebody has we can talk about something happier than FCC fines.
Quite well. 6:40.
Yeah.
2 hours quick. Okay.
I
Lot to
wanted,
digest. Yeah, a lot to digest, but interesting.
yeah, I just wanted to give a broad panorama of all the things that are going. To me, all this is linked together. I could probably give smaller presentations on this, but it's just so much is happening right now in radio and TV and emergency alerting. You know, we need to take a look at it with a broader eye, and really the survival of broadcast in general industry. But I unfortunately am getting buzzed by my people who rejoined the meeting. Um, but if you do have any questions, Kent has my email address. Um, I'm here to take questions, complaints, comments. Actually, I don't take complaints. Go to support sales at Digital Systems. Those guys take complaints. But if you have questions or comments or thoughts or just want to spitball, I'm around. Um, I work on, I should have introduced, I work on mainly on the policy and the strategy side. I don't really delve into sales or um, software development. But if you do have questions, feel free to contact me anytime.